Hello besties, welcome back to my channel. Now that August has come to a close, it is time to talk about all of the books that I read this summer. It's kind of a big wrap up that's going to include what I read in June, July, and August. Since I didn't film individual wrap ups for all of those months, I thought might as well just group them all together and call it my big summer wrap up. So yeah, a couple of months ago, I filmed a summer TBR video talking about all the books that I wanted to read this summer. In that video, I talked about 24 books, and I just went back and rewatched that video to tally up how many books I actually ended up reading this summer, which was fun to do, but I ended up reading 11 out of those 24. In my mind, summer technically goes on until September 22nd, which I believe is the first day of fall, so we'll see if I end up reading any more summery books at the beginning of September, but at this point in time, I read 11 out of those 24. I think it might be kind of fun to do TBR and wrap up videos this way going forward, where I set out a TBR for the season and then at the end of the season do a little wrap up and talk about which ones I ended up reading from that TBR. So I think I'll probably do that for fall too, if you guys think that's a good idea. But with all of that being said, we have a lot of books to talk about today. So grab yourself a drink, a snack, put this on in the background. It might be a long one, I don't know. It probably will be. I have my big old matcha that I made here that's the size of my head, and it is so good. So this is my beverage of choice for the video. But without any further ado, let's start off talking about the books that I read in June. The first book that I read in June was Silver Elite by Dani Francis, and I don't have the physical copy of that book. At the bookstore where I work, everyone was kind of passing around an ARC copy of that one, so I gave it back for someone else to read, so someone else has it now. I believe when I finished that book, I gave it around a 3-star. The more time that has passed, the lower that rating has kind of gotten in my mind. This book was really making the rounds all over the internet towards the beginning of the summer because it came out that Dani Francis is a pen name, supposedly a pen name of a very famous author. So everyone was trying to figure out who this famous author actually is. Some people thought maybe it was Elsie Silver. Some people thought it was maybe a different cowboy romance author. I have no idea who I think it is, but I think it's fun that there's speculation. This book is in the dystopian romance genre. A lot of people were saying that it felt like Divergent for adults. And I can see where people made that correlation, but unfortunately, this book seriously lacked plot for me. It was extremely predictable, and the romance was just like so lust heavy. But yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend this book. I can totally understand why a lot of people enjoyed it if you just want to read it for a silly fun time. The second book that I read in June was Between Friends and Lovers by Charlene Obuobi. I think that's how you say her name. I really ended up enjoying this book. I gave it 4 stars. In it, we're following Mal and Jo. Jo is a doctor, but she's also an influencer. She's created her influencer platform on sharing valuable information for women about their health. And then Mal, or Malcolm, is an author. Jo has this friend Ezra who she's had feelings for a very long time, but he has never treated her right. So we find ourselves in this little love triangle situation, but there's an obvious right answer. But yeah, Ezra is kind of like a socialite. His mom has a film production company, I believe. So that's how Mal and Jo end up crossing paths at some like big party for people in the industry. Jo is such a strong female character, but she has a lot of issues from the traumas that she endured in her past that makes it hard for her to trust Mal and be a good partner. I actually kind of found myself relating to her in a lot of things. She's the type of person that kind of pulls back from relationships when she gets scared. And I read some Goodreads reviews after reading this book that annoyed a lot of people, which was funny because that was one thing that I actually enjoyed about Jo because it made her seem really real and relatable to me. Anyways, if you want to read a romance that has like a bit more fiction elements to it, I think this is a book that people would probably classify as like women's fiction. I definitely recommend this one. Oh my god, you guys. Next I read The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I think I kind of have an unpopular opinion of not loving this one. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars because I think it's such an important story to be told, and I think Kristen Hanna told that story well. It is about a woman who becomes a nurse in the Vietnam War, all of the hardship that she faces literally being at war, and then all the additional hardship she faces when she comes home from the war and is treated with such insane misogyny. Like, some people don't even believe that there were women in Vietnam, let alone believe that she could have PTSD from the things she endured, even though she was literally on the battlefield saving people's lives. But yeah, this book was so sad, so traumatizing, so infuriating, but it was meant to be infuriating because it was meant to make you empathize with our main character. But yeah, this is the first book that I've read by Kristen Hanna. I don't really think this type of book is for me, so that kind of puts me off from trying any of her other books. But let me know if you think there's some other ones that I might like. I think I could maybe like Firefly Lane. I don't know, but it's not at the top of my TBR. Then I read Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This book was so interesting. I also ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Off the bat, I found myself relating a lot to our main character, Casey, and then the story kind of got weird, but the story very much felt more like a character study rather than having a strictly defined plot. We're kind of following along Casey as she meanders through Boston. Yeah, took place in Boston, trying to find direction, trying to write the novel she's been working on for years, and trying to grapple with the death of her mother, which really rocked her world and honestly sent her into depression. It reminds me a lot of Promise Me Sunshine in those aspects, but this book was a lot less hopeful feeling than Promise Me Sunshine was. There was also like a romance element in this one, but not in the traditional sense, if that makes sense. I also really did enjoy the ending of this book. I feel like it tied the beginning back together in the end. I always love when a book does that. I actually feel like I maybe would recommend reading this one in the summer going into fall time, if it interests you. Next I read This Is a Love Story by Jessica Soffer. The way this book was written was so unique. It's written as memories that our main characters have. Our main characters are Jane and Abe, and they are a married couple who have been together for a very long time, and Jane is very ill and dying. This recounts the story of their love, all of their experiences, hardships, and their time in New York City. I forget if this style of writing is classified as second person, but like every sentence starts off as, you did this, and then do you remember it felt like this, and you were right there when you did this. So when you're in Abe's chapters, you have his memories in that style, and then when you're in Jane's chapters, you have her memories in that style. Yeah, that was interesting to read. I've never really read a book like that. We were kind of putting pieces together. We'd get like one piece in Abe's perspective, one piece in Jane's perspective, and when it all comes together, it's like so upsetting. I feel like that maybe doesn't make any sense unless you've read this book and then you know what I'm talking about. But this book was definitely very raw. It talks a lot about Jane's experience with motherhood as someone who probably wasn't really ever meant to be a mother, but felt guilty about that. I don't know, this book was really interesting, but once again, just wasn't really for me. I ended up rating this one 3 stars, if I didn't say already. And then thank God I picked this book up, because for a while there, I was just in 3-star territory. Every book that I was reading was just like, okay. And then I read The X-Files by Jessica Joyce, and it was 5 stars. This right here is my definition of a perfect romance book. It is a second chance romance. Georgia and Eli are brought back together by the wedding of their mutual best friend, and as like the best woman and the best man, they have to do a lot together to prepare for this wedding and help out. And obviously this kind of draws them back together. Things unfold as to why they didn't work out in the past, and Eli's just like undying love for Georgia gets revealed as things go on. Like if you want a book about a man who's been down bad, read this one. Eli will be your guy. Anyways, I love a second chance romance where there's just that natural tension because our characters know each other so well. So they know each other's tells, they know little things that they like or how they're going to react. And then there's also that element of tension of not knowing why they didn't work out the first time. I can't recommend this book enough. I loved it. Then on my Kindle, I read Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I got that one from Libby, so I don't have the physical copy to show you. I ended up rating this one 3 stars. It was cute, it just wasn't my favorite. It was weird though. There was like a lot of little random connections to my life in that book that kind of freaked me out and made me stop reading it for a moment. Like, our main character's middle name is June. That's my middle name. I think her baby was like born on August 1st. That's my birthday. Like, weird things like that. But yeah, I think Hannah Bonham Young's writing is very fun. She makes her characters very witty and funny and just easy to read, very likable. I also loved how our male main character, why don't I remember his name? Bo, Win and Bo. I wanted to say Win and Harriet, but that is Happy Place. Anyways, Bo's love language is acts of service. So if you like that in your books, I bet you'll love Bo. But this book was like a little too spicy for my taste. So I think all of those scenes kind of put me off, but don't let like my thoughts on this book deter you, because I know a lot of people really loved this book and I can totally see why. Next, I read Fearless by Lauren Roberts, the third in the Powerless trilogy. I ended up rating this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed being back in this world with these characters. Even though I rated this book 4 stars, looking back on it, it might be more like a 3.5, just because I have some mixed feelings about this book. I don't love the way it ended. I feel like she did what needed to be done, but I almost kind of wish there could have been a little bit of a different ending. I actually read this book in a reading vlog, and one other thing that I talked about is I feel like the characters are not totally fleshed out. It's still like a fun, addictive YA fantasy read. And for that reason, I would recommend it. It felt nostalgic to read because when I read Powerless a couple of years ago, I absolutely loved it. It was one of the very first fantasy books that I read. I think it's a great series for people who have never read fantasy before to get into it. But if I were to reread it again, I'm not quite sure it would hold up for my tastes now, which is like kind of sad to say. Yeah, I know she's gonna come out with like some more novellas in the series or something, and I don't think I'll be reading those. Okay, then I finished another series. I finished the Inheritance Games series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the third and final book, The Final Gambit. If you don't know what the Inheritance Games series is about, basically it's about this teenage girl, Avery, who randomly inherits this insane sum of money from this billionaire. When she meets this billionaire's family, she finds out that it wasn't so random after all, and there's all these riddles and mysteries that she has to uncover to figure out why all of this money was left to her. And she does this with the billionaire's 4 grandsons. So yeah, it's a super fun series. It's one of those series where you're constantly like trying to put puzzle pieces together in your head as you're reading it. I think Jennifer Lynn Barnes ended it in a very nice way where it feels concluded, but she also like left herself some leeway to write all of these other books that she's written, like The Brothers Hawthorne and The Grandest Game. I personally, once again, don't think I'll be reading any of those other spin-offs. I'm like, happy leaving it there. I feel like if I would have read this maybe in high school or middle school or something, I definitely would have read all those other books. But at this point, I think the series started to feel a little bit YA for my tastes, but I'm still glad that I completed it. I think I'm honestly more of a Naturals girl than I am an Inheritance Games girl. Comment down below which series you prefer. Okay, that concludes everything I read in June. How many books was that? 9. I read 9 books in June. To start off July, I read Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. I loved this book. I am a huge fan of this series, honestly. They're just such easy to read small town romances, and I think this one is my favorite one in the series. I ended up giving it, what did I give it? 4.5 stars. It's another second chance romance, so I guess I'm just a fan of that trope. We're following Cam and Dusty, who were high school sweethearts, but after high school, different circumstances ended up pulling them apart. But they end up back in their small town in Wyoming, and things obviously rekindle. But I was so excited to get to this book because we've gotten little pieces of Cam and Dusty in all the other books leading up to this one, so it was so fun to finally get their story. I really love the way Lila Sage wrote all of her characters and how they all come back in all the other books. We got like a conclusion to Cam and Dusty's story, but we also got lots of elements of all the other characters, since it was kind of like saying bye to all of them as well by concluding this series. And I just had such a good time reading this. I love men who yearn. Next, I read one of my favorite books I think that I've read so far this year. This is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and it's actually the very first book that I've ever read by Rachel Gillig, which makes me so excited to read One Dark Window this fall because I just have a feeling I'm gonna love it. If I love it anywhere near as much as I loved this book. You can't already tell. This was 5 stars from me. It was one of those where every day I was just so excited to go home and read my book. I love when I have a book that I'm reading that I'm just like itching to go home and read every day. We're following Sybil, who is a diviner. Diviners are a group of girls that have to serve the cathedral for 10 years at a time. And basically they undergo this process in which they can tell people their futures through all of these symbols that they see when they're divining. It's a very brutal, exhausting process to be a diviner, but Sybil never really saw anything else as an option for her. She just saw this as her duty until one by one diviners are starting to go missing. So she has to go on this journey, this mission to find all of her sisters, and she is doing this with our mailman character Rory, who's one of the king's knights, and a gargoyle who brings the best humor and light ever to this story. This book had very like dark storybook vibes with obviously great elements of humor. This book is also really heavy. My wrist is hurting. I need to put that down. This just made me absolutely fall in love with Rachel Gillig's writing, and I am so excited. I believe this is going to be a duology. I know there's going to be another book in this series. I cannot wait for it to come out. You guys have to read this. Then I read a little novella that's available on Kindle Unlimited. It's called The Answer Is No, and I read it because it's by none other than Frederick Bachman. It's about this guy, Lucas, who is in his 20s, and he is very much an introvert. His ideal night is ordering food in, not leaving his apartment, and not talking to anyone. But he is sucked into uncovering this mystery by this group of people that are kind of like the apartment committee. It's like the PTA, but for his apartment building. I don't know what you would call that. So he is forced to do his least favorite thing ever and spend a lot of time with a lot of other people. And in classic Frederick Bachman style, this book was so sweet and funny and heartwarming. Sad at some points, but great payoff in the end. If you want just like a little novella to read, if you're in between books and don't know what to read next, I would definitely recommend it. It'll give you a good taste of what his writing's like. Next, I read Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I have been seeing this book everywhere, so I was so excited to read it for myself and see what I think. I ended up really enjoying it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Funnily enough, the way Shelby Van Pelt writes felt very similar to the way Frederick Bachman writes, to me at least, especially his book Anxious People, because in Anxious People and in this book, we're getting, I guess Beartown as well, we're getting all these different perspectives that eventually weave together. It was also reminiscent of Frederick Bachman in the sense that our main character is going through something very sad. She's experiencing a lot of loss, but there is such a strong element of hopefulness throughout the entire story that is really, really heartwarming. Our main character, Tova, is a janitor at an aquarium, and at that aquarium is our octopus here, Marcellus, whose perspective we actually get in the book. Okay, y'all, I fear my camera overheated, so we had to take a little break, and I do not remember where I left off. I know I was talking about this book, and how I enjoyed it, how I enjoyed Marcellus, and how I enjoyed how it was written. I think that's really all there is to say. Then I read One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, which, if you don't already know, is a companion novel to Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I loved this one. I also really enjoyed the book that Carly Fortune came out with last summer, so I think I'm a pretty big fan of hers now. We're following Alice, who is a photographer who has come to Barry's Bay to spend the summer with her grandmother, and Charlie Florek, who is Sam Florek's brother. Sam is the male main character in Every Summer After, and Charlie also is a portion of that story, so it's really fun that we get to have his full story in this one. And he is just everything. He is such a fun, sweet, flirty golden retriever character, and I really liked Alice's character too. Carly Fortune is so good at setting a summer setting. Like, I desperately wish I could go to Barry's Bay. It gives the best summer lake vibes. So I know summer's kind of coming to a close now, but if you want one last summery book to read before it's over, I'd say go with this one, especially if you've read Every Summer After. I would also recommend reading Every Summer After first, but you don't have to if you don't want to before reading this one. Okay, that was everything I read in July. I read 5 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I read 5 books in July. Now on to our third and last month, August. This past month, I read 7 books in August. The first of which was none other than Time of Your Life by Jessa Hastings. If you guys have watched any of my videos, I've probably talked about Magnolia Parks because it is one of my favorite series ever, maybe my favorite book ever. That's like a crazy thing to say, but it is what got me back into reading a few years ago. Anyways, this one takes place in the 90s. Isolde, I think that's how you say her name. She has the craziest name ever. Isolde is a very famous supermodel. Her face is everywhere. And Joa is in a really popular band. So yeah. Also, it takes place in London, but Joa is from Manchester, so the way he speaks takes a second to get used to because he uses a lot of slang. I didn't really mind, though. I loved the vibes. This isn't my favorite thing she's written. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It didn't come close to The Conditions of Will, which I rated like 6 stars. I read that earlier this year and haven't stopped thinking about it, but this scratched the itch of having something written by Jessa to read, and I thought it was super fun to have the London in the 90s setting to go to in my brain. I read this while I was in London, by the way. I talked about it a little bit in my video that I posted from my time in London. It was super fun to be able to read this while I was there, for sure. I believe this is going to have a second book and be a duology. It leaves you off on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I'm so intrigued to see where Jessa is going to take this because I feel like these two can't end up together, but who knows? I'll definitely read the next one when it comes out. Then I was really in the mood to just keep reading books set in England, so I read My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan. Julia Whelan is like everybody's favorite audiobook narrator, but she actually has a couple of books that she has written herself, one of which is My Oxford Year, which has just been turned into a Netflix movie. Still yet to watch it. Apparently it's not quite as good as the book, but I still want to see it. We're following our main character Ella, who's gone back to school to get her master's at Oxford, and the professor Jamie, who she sparks up a romance with. This is a book that I feel like a lot of bookish people would really enjoy because Ella is literally studying English literature. There are a lot of bookish quotes. Every chapter begins with like a quote from a famous poet. Jamie's specialty is Alfred Tennyson, so there are a lot of Tennyson quotes in there as well. But yeah, it really scratched the itch because when I left England, I was really missing it. So this was the perfect book for me to read to pretend like I was still there. I gave that one 4 stars, by the way. Okay, then I read this little collection of Oscar Wilde quotes. I got this while I was in England. It's called Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast. I found this at a little art gallery and read the first page and was just so intrigued. I saw a Goodreads review that said this is like Oscar Wilde's Twitter account and couldn't agree more. It's just like his little thoughts. You can kind of see it's just like little quotes, little snippets from his other works. I wonder where I dog-eared this page. There was another one that I loved that said something like, I never put off things to tomorrow, that in which I can do the day after, or like just something funny about procrastination. Anyways, after reading this, I became obsessed with Oscar Wilde's brain. I thought he was so funny. So I ended up getting The Picture of Dorian Gray to read this fall, which I'm really excited to get to because I really want to read more by Oscar Wilde now. I didn't rate this because I don't really know how to. It's just like a little book, a little collection of quotes. But yeah, I had a great time reading it. Then I read The Wedding People by Alison Espach. The next 3 books actually I read in my latest reading vlog, so you guys should go watch that if you want to. I was trying to finish up my summer TBR before summer's over. The Wedding People takes place in the summer, so I wanted to read it while it was still summer. In this one, we're following Phoebe, who, following a long series of very unfortunate events, has found herself at this hotel in Rhode Island where she has decided to end her life. Isla is a bride who is having her wedding at this hotel that same week, and Isla thought that she had booked out this hotel for her wedding. So when she meets Phoebe, she wonders what she's doing there because she doesn't know Phoebe, and for whatever reason, Phoebe is honest with her and tells her why she has come to this hotel. Obviously, Isla is aghast and taken back and says, "You cannot do that." But Isla's main concern is that it will ruin her wedding. It's a very funny, self-centered type of character. But she ends up pulling Phoebe in to join in on all of these activities with the other wedding people. In the midst of this, Phoebe meets all of these people, discovers more about herself, and kind of rediscovers that zest for life, which is really special to read about. I really liked this book. It did feel a little bit slow to get into at the beginning for me. In the end, I really liked it and gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read in that video was These Summer Storms by Sarah MacLean. It's another one that I read on my Kindle that I got from Libby, so I don't have it here to show you. That's all right, because I didn't really enjoy that book that much. I heard people referring to that book like an adult version of The Inheritance Games, and it is sort of similar to The Inheritance Games in the sense that our main character, Alice, her father is a billionaire who passes away. In order for Alice, her siblings, and her mom to get their inheritance, they have to participate in these games that their father has laid out for them. However, it wasn't really games, it was just like conditions that they had to follow for a week. I think when I heard inheritance games, I thought there was going to be more games, more mysteries, more riddles, more things to decode. And I didn't really get that, so I was a bit let down. I also did not like the romance in this. Basically forced myself to finish it, unfortunately, so that one I ended up giving 2 stars. Swiftly moving along, luckily I read a book that I really enjoyed right after. This is Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I am a huge fan of Ashley Poston because she writes such interesting stories with so much heart and so much whimsy that make you feel so deeply and also leave you feeling very positive. I don't know. This one is about Joni, who is a songwriter, and Sebastian, who is a musician. They somehow find each other in each other's heads, like they can hear each other's thoughts, and they can also both hear fragments of a song. So they decide to come together and try and actually write out this whole song in hopes that if they do that, that will get them out of each other's heads. So yeah, super interesting plot, and I feel like Ashley Poston pulled it off really well. And then the last book that I finished in August was Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This was actually another one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. It was such a beautiful story of family and sisterhood. We're following 3 sisters who are all very different, but are brought back together because of the death of their 4th sister. This book discusses topics like addiction, family trauma, grief, and I feel like Coco Mellors did that so beautifully. This is definitely a book that I will reread at some point, and it also made me really excited to try out Cleopatra and Frankenstein, her other book. I haven't read that one before, so let me know if you guys have, if you liked it. This book was 5 stars for me. All right, you guys, that concludes everything I read in June, July, and August for a total of this many books. I should have counted as I was going, but I did not, so future me is gonna count and put it right here. Read a few different genres, got a couple new 5 stars. Overall, had some great summer reading, but I am so excited for fall reading, so stay tuned for my fall TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, comment a wave emoji because you're amazing and I love you if you watched me yap for that long. Well, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, depending on whatever time you're watching this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye!